Hi guys, my name is Heather and I am a returning student to the Ag program here at Jackson. And the topics that I decided to cover for my project are going to cover the medicinal marijuana industry, the recreational marijuana industry, as well as industrial hemp here in Michigan. So let's take a look.
Since 2008, the marijuana industry in Michigan has changed dramatically, and how the industry was before is nothing like what we have come to know today. When medical marijuana was first legalized in Michigan, the laws were set to have a patient acquire either their own flower and grow themselves, or they were allowed to have a caregiver grow for them. As time moved on, we saw an increase in co-op style grows, which then helped set up a platform for compassion clubs. Compassion clubs, while similar to a dispensary, when marijuana was first legalized, would require you to be a patient of the compassion club if you wanted to be able to purchase anything within the shop. Over time, as laws continued to change, we saw changes in the industry that were sometimes sudden and scary. One of the biggest was between 2018 and 2019. Michigan banned sales from caregivers to dispensaries of untested flower. With the penalty high of a caregiver having overages, no longer having a place for overages to go, for many almost felt like a setup. But just like with everything else in many industries, things continued to change, and eventually the worry is that the caregivers who originally supplied the majority of the products to the compassion clubs and the dispensaries and kind of started this industry will no longer be allowed to sell or have patients when commercial cannabis takes over the market. Over the years, changes like these have created a lot of worry for caregivers in the market, not knowing how much longer the caregiver model will be accepted in Michigan as industries continue to change. The downside of caregivers going away is also lower prices from caregivers go away, as well as you are left with higher priced flower. But we can go ahead and touch more on that further in the video.
There's a lot of information on the market about these industries, so we'll go ahead and dive in and take a look at all of these markets, their background, what products they have, what financial aspects kind of come along with these, as well as what equipment you might need or what other companies are already in this market already. As we take a look at these, we'll also see what kind of issues cannabis might have when growing and how this can benefit and help the agricultural industry. Let's go see.
In 1972, John Lennon and a few others came to Ann Arbor, Michigan to attend a freedom rally for an imprisoned Ann Arbor poet activist, John Schneider, who was in prison for 10 years for 2 joints. 2 months later, in April 1972, the first hash bash was born. In the 1970s, marijuana was decriminalized in Ann Arbor with only a $5 fine if found with 2 ounces or less. One of the hardest parts of the Michigan marijuana industry is trying to transition from a caregiver to a licensed grower. While on these slides I can show you that a lot of the costs and the fees that go along with becoming a licensed grower, the capital requirements to obtain the license are hard to achieve, especially for a caregiver. With some of the industry startup fees ranging from $100,000 to $60,000, setup and investment over $800,000, electricity over $55,000, and other expenses over $70,000, I don't know how many people that just have $1 million sitting in their bank or their back pocket. For many years in the cannabis industry, a very big problem was the fact that marijuana is still federally illegal. Because of that, marijuana facilities have found it difficult to impossible at times with money management, since banks a lot of the times will not allow them to use their services because of the federal aspect of the industry. This leads to issues with high theft of brick and mortar locations because too much cash on hand at all times. When we think of money and capital, this also lies another problem. As a caregiver, with it being federally illegal, you are not allowed to write off any of the expenses from your grow, which also means even if you gain a substantial income from being a caregiver, you legally cannot claim it as a business or write any portion of it off. So as a caregiver trying to step into the legal market, the capital requirement states that no previous capital can be from illegal or caregiver cannabis sales. While some caregivers have been able to find their way into the big industry, not every caregiver has been able to as well. With laws always changing and testing becoming more prevalent in the market, the abundance of goods that we now have available to consume has become abundant. Before the recreational market in Michigan, we were seeing an increase in products that were available, but after recreational became legal, there was a huge boom in variety of consumables that was available for both medicinal and recreational markets. The biggest difference between medicinal products and recreational products when stepping into any of the stores is usually going to be potency of the product that you are trying to buy. As we've covered before in other markets about how traceability is really important, the cannabis industry, they hold their feet to the fire when it comes to traceability and making sure that every cannabis product is tracked and traced from seed to consumable. In dispensaries, we can see a variety of products from flower to pre-rolls, vaporizers, waxes, hash, RSO, tincture, gummies, chocolates, and a whole lot more. Another business aspect that we can see inside of the industry is food. While I haven't seen Michigan dive into it as much, I know California and Colorado do a lot with dinners that are infused with cannabis. As we can see on the following slides, this is a new market for recreational cannabis. And it's very interesting because it gives a new way for recreational users to consume in low doses. And it's been a very successful business model in other states that have incorporated it with tastings and gatherings to bring people together and give them the ability to try and consume cannabis in a totally different way. It's also another way for businesses that might be looking to do a wine that's infused with cannabis or a vodka that's infused with cannabis. You give the consumers the ability to try a product before they see it on the market as well. So it gives a good tester market to do these little tastings for recreational users. In the next couple of years, we will probably also see an increase in cannabis smoking lounges as well.
In 2019, a Cannabis Business Convention was held in downtown Detroit at Kobo. The goal of the Cannabis Convention was to bring together many different people in the industry, between packagers or processors or growers all alike, all together so they could see the changes that were coming within the recreational market for the next couple of years. I myself went as an industry grower with a friend, and it was awesome to see all of the different companies that they could choose from, pamphlets, samples, everything that as a person going into the industry and business would really want to see and have access to. But the one thing that did disappoint me, because there were a lot of caregivers there like myself, was how they made the new recreational market sound so easy. As a caregiver, we have patients that come to us and they get direct sales. They kind of left that out with explaining the recreational market. recreational, you cannot sell to consumers directly. Your product has to go to a processing center, be tested, then packaged, then go to consumers. Just like how we learned with traceability. But if your product doesn't pass, or if you use products that are still left within the bud or the cannabis product, and if it does not test through, you do not get your flower back, and you also do not profit. So for a caregiver, that could be a huge loss. If you invest a lot of money into a business aspect like that, one hit, two hits could completely wipe out a potential business that you put together. This one aspect I really wish would have been included in the conference that we went to. But there are benefits to the recreational market. I just wish it was a little more accessible for those who started the industry in the first place.
We have seen a lot of growth and a lot of changes in the cannabis industry since it was born. How the market will change and how it has changed is kind of pushing in the direction of big business kind of taking over. So as we can see, there's a lot of companies that we already have in Michigan that are going strong between medicinal and recreational. They do very well, and they're spread all over Michigan. So really trying to compete with that, especially when there's limitations in certain districts and counties of how many facilities of each kind are even allowed. So it makes it a very hard market to get into unless you've just got that special little oomph that someone else just doesn't have. Over the next few years, we will definitely see the window of opportunity get smaller and smaller. One noticeable one that caregivers have seen is we used to have the ability to submit into cannabis cups as caregivers. But as of recently, we are seeing that a lot of these competitions are now only for large commercial grows. So we don't even have the ability to get our name out there like we would have had the ability to do 8+ years ago. The next thing that I wanted to make sure that I covered was pests and diseases in the cannabis industry. I noticed when we're going over agriculture, we do have a lot of things that are out there that can affect crops. But in my experience, I have never seen a plant that was so susceptible to so much stuff. A lot of things that you can get in our agricultural crops. And in some cases, we actually can have issue with worry about it contaminating, like from an ag crop into a cannabis crop if it's going to cause issues with pests. I'm gonna bring it up again, but because of the federal part of cannabis, they are so strict on what you can and cannot use on marijuana and hemp. I again wish that they were so strict on the foods that we eat too, because there are a lot of things that can affect cannabis, and what you're allowed to use, the list is so small, because even though there's products on the market that we use in the agriculture industry all the time, they test cannabis now. So if it shows up in the plant, they're going to deem it not safe. They don't test our food that we consume the same way and the same rigorous testing that they put cannabis through. In the cannabis industry, you have to be extremely careful with what products you choose and decide to put on your grow, because we've had or seen incidences like a very large grow a few years back that used Eagle 20, which is used in the agriculture industry to help with mites and mildew and other pests. But when burned, it creates a chemical called myclobutanol, which produces toxic hydrogen cyanide gas when burned. So you can't use that with cannabis. So the limitations, the restrictions are definitely there as far as how we can treat and manage problems in the industry. Several years back, I did work with a couple of caregivers, and I do remember a couple of practices that they did that definitely would not be allowed in the market today. The use of neem oil in late flowering stage was something that was very common and recommended, and you can use it in your vegetable garden, but you don't smoke your vegetables. And when you test cannabis that has been sprayed with neem in later flowering stages, it's still there upon testing. You cannot, unfortunately, use even some of the same organic methods with cannabis outdoors. This issue makes indoor controlled grows more ideal.
So in this video so far, we have covered the medicinal and the recreational side of the cannabis industry and market. But what about industrial hemp? In 2018, industrial hemp was passed in Michigan for farmers to be able to grow on the farm. But most of the people that decided to jump on the hemp bandwagon were not necessarily farmers, but those who wanted to use industrial hemp for CBD production. Because of this, after legalization, a lot of the rules and regulations are kind of geared towards testing to make sure that we don't reach above a certain THC level. This can scare away farmers. It's an added expense that they're not used to. But if we were able to grow it in the fields, not for CBD, but for other really good products that we use hemp for, we could use it as a rotation crop that can improve soil, decrease input, and increase profit to farmers by the end of the year. Let's go ahead and take a look.
When Michigan passed the bill to legalize industrial hemp, the majority of the people that applied for the license were growers that intended to grow it for CBD. As we have seen over the past couple of years, CBD has flooded the market and can be even seen in your local gas stations. Because industrial hemp has been farmed similarly to cannabis, it has made it where a crop that could be used to replace several unsustainable current practices is instead predominantly used in a single market. After the legalization of industrial hemp, we saw an increase in requirements for testing because of the concern of THC levels being higher than what was allowed for industrial hemp. The cost of testing can add an expense to the grower, and depending on how they are growing it and what they are growing for, it can be a huge chunk of potential profit. Because of this, industrial hemp has been held back in the industry. If we use industrial hemp as a rotation crop, we can get 4 times the amount of biomass replacing it with corn. We can get 4 times the amount of biomass that we currently get with cotton. We can make more sustainable plastics. We can make building materials that are not only reusable, unlike concrete, but also mold resistant and help maintain thermal properties within a building. While these are just a fraction of the options that we have with incorporating hemp into our fields, and we have industrial hemp varieties that are less susceptible to some of the issues that we do see in marijuana. Some research has indicated that using industrial hemp in our crop rotations can improve soil quality and decrease pest area, while also increasing potential profit for a season. We have equipment on the market for precision planting and harvesting. With so much potential on a product, it is sad to see it held back in one single market, when it could be something that takes a struggling farmer out of debt.